Owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, we are here today to talk about the newly released Unsanctioned product. Some players are genuinely dissatisfied with the way the product is designed, and as a result and effect of that, the price of the box set as well. So I've already done a video really like breaking down what's going on with this in terms of like what's in the product in depth. So I figured what I would do is just kind of talk about it briefly in case you're somebody who's curious about what's going on, but you're not fully like versed in what's going down and you want to know a little bit, right? So the idea behind this box set is essentially there are 5 mini magic decks, all right? 5 mini decks. And if you don't know what the sets are, they're essentially joke magic sets. Although, I mean, truth be told, they've become less and less jokey as things have gone along. It's as Magic the Gathering has moved more and more away from catering to a more adult audience, we've noticed a shift in the way that they do things. And well, actually, one of the funniest things is the way that they're trying to go back and make old uncards more politically correct, as it were. And some of the changes that they've made, you go, okay, you know what, I can see that. And I can see why maybe some people might be a little like nose bent out of shape about it in today's current climate. But there are certain changes, no word of a lie. The most mind-blowing one was on Booster Tutor, where the Booster Tutor is a spell where you pay 1 black, right? And you get to open a random booster pack that you already have. Like you grab a booster pack of your own, open it, and you get to pick a card from that booster pack and put it into your hand. It's a really fun little concept where normally a tutor lets you go through your deck, but instead it's going to let you go through an unopened package of magic cards. It was just a silly little sort of fun thing, but the flavor text said, real men use Arabian Nights, like that whole like Arabian Nights are the hardest to get, most expensive sort of things. Well, people started getting upset about that on Twitter. I'm a real man even if I don't. And just like, oh my Lord, like relax. I know that's a little bit of an aside, a little bit of a tangent, but it's amazing to see how worked up people get over absolutely nothing. Now, that's not the kind of complaints about this box set that I am here to discuss. That's just a side note I wanted to mention. So this is a joke set that has become decidedly less jokey. It still does have amusing concepts, but it has had any kind of edge to it has been worn down to a soft little like rubber safety shield. Don't hurt yourselves on the edge, kids. You know, like that sort of thing. So in one way, I'm not a huge fan of the way the unsets have been going. They've been getting progressively less enjoyable, and they start to feel more akin to regular Magic sets in a lot of ways. They don't seem to take as many risks in terms of card design. But regardless, let's put that aside. What you need to know is it's underneath it all. Is supposed to be a fun, jokey style concept where you'll have cards that are based on jokes and Magic, or just concepts that don't like really work normally in Magic, and crazy things where it's like, how many shoes are you wearing? Put those on top of the card as +1/+1 counters, and just dumb, like this guy gets a bonus when you're eating nachos or something because he's not your friend. Yeah, like just dumb nonsense. Those aren't real cards. Those are terrible reject ideas that I just came up with in terms of, well, no, the boot one is actually, what am I talking about? They do have the boot tree where you actually put your boots on it. But regardless, the idea behind is supposed to be fun. I mean, you put the in fun is how I look at it. And I always liked the idea of the unset. So for me, this is a product that at first glance, I actually was like, oh, this seems like a fine product. But after hearing people's complaints about it, I'm like, actually, there is at least one valid core issue that I find with the product. So the idea is similar to Jumpstart. If you've seen the recent talks about Jumpstart, where you take 2 20-card boosters, mash them together, and you got yourself a deck. Same concept here, where you take 2 of the 30-card decks. They have a deck for each color. You take 2 of the 30-card decks, shuffle them together, and you're good to go. Now, in terms of bringing newness to the table, it has a total of 16 new cards created for it. Each deck has 3 new cards that never existed in the Unsphere before. And I did do a video going through all the new cards because I thought they were really cool. So it's got 3 new cards per deck, and then a 4th card that's shared across the decks. And I mean, in terms of the amount of variety you get, I admit they could have done more. They could have actually designed like mostly new uncards. That would have been nice with a few reprints. I would have preferred to see it the other way around, where instead of like 3 new cards, we had 3 reprints and we got more variety in the box set. It's similar to a like game night box set as well, where you have a scenario where you just want something you can just play with your friends. There's not a lot of like work ahead of time. It's just open the box and go. And that's the idea behind the Unsanctioned box set. But it comes with something along with those 30 card decks, and that is unlands. Now, the unlands are an interesting beast because I think, honestly, unlands are what clued Wizards into the market for basic lands. Because for the longest time, most people didn't care that much about basic lands. Sure, if you had like alpha or beta basics, like really old basic lands, that might be relevant to somebody. Somebody might want those. But overall, mostly lands were meh. Even when they did like arena lands, where you had to actually play in the special arena event to win the lands, they didn't really matter that much. All of that was just kind of like, what are you gonna do, right? Like they never took off. But the unlands, slowly over time, between Unglued and Unhinged specifically, they became very valuable lands. And the reason for this is that Wizards went outside the norm. The norm for a basic land is artwork at the top, mana symbol at the bottom. And for a recent example of straying outside the regular bounds of lands and making something more attractive, all you have to do is look at the Theros lands. The Theros lands with the mana symbol suspended in a twilight sky sort of setup, that is very attractive to Magic players, and those lands are doing quite well. People are a big fan of it. So the Unglued and Unhinged were the first like varieties of these that picked up value over time, and it kind of expressed itself with Unglued, but Unhinged really cemented that whole like, these lands are something. They're a phenomenon. You know what I mean? It's a real deal. Wizards tried to recapture that kind of magic by including them in the original Zendikar block, and then we saw that again when we went back to battle for Zendikar, and they did that throughout the block, including adding special wastelands with full artwork, and this continued on into the, the Amonkhet block as well, where we saw like, okay, they know these lands are a big deal. And it's an irrefutable point that they know that the unlands are the most valuable thing from unsets because they're the only cards that are really worth anything. Aside from a few random cards from each of the unsets, the sets are worthless. And it's not even just commons and uncommons like most sets. The rares, everything in unsets are virtually worthless because you can't play with them in regular Magic, and most players don't care about the unstuff. It's a niche. So all of the value gets top-loaded into the lands. And the most obvious example of this effect is with the newest unset, the Unstable set, where Wizards actually went ahead and put holo foils on the lands as if they were rares. You know what, like, think about that. They don't do that with any basic lands in any packs. But with the unsets, they know, you know what, actually, this is where all of the value is going to go. So if an unpack is worth like $4 or $5, that's what the land in the pack is worth. And almost anything else you can crack that's non-foil is just worthless. There's no secondary market value. So it was an interesting combination of creating unique lands and pairing them with a set that had no other value outside of the unset. Like if you like uncards, you're going to love the unsets. If you don't, the lands are usable in regular Magic. They don't have a silver border. There's no rules against using them. So the lands are like the sweet spot for the unset. And honestly, Unstable felt fairly disappointing overall. The lands were the saving grace for people. And then putting in foil versions of land made boxes into like lottery ticket grabs. So all of this like lead up with the lands, this is what's causing the current problem that people have with the Unsanctioned that's out right now. It's both the price of the product and the way they've chosen to handle the unlands is leading to dissatisfaction in a number of people, and it's completely understandable. So what they've done with this box set is they have included 2 different styles of lands. So you have 5 full art lands and 5 squirrel lands. And the 5 full art lands are similar to older unlands. They try and make each one very distinctive. Now, the newest version, I think actually the artwork done for them is nice, but the styling that they've chose is ugly. What they did was they took a concept that feels very much like the original Unglued lands, which has a oval shape in the middle, but they've overlaid that on top of the art. So they have like a full artifact, but it's kind of ruined by this overlay that I personally don't like. Now, this is a matter of taste. For me, I think the lands are ugly. That is irrelevant to the financial point that we're going to talk about here. But I do actually think that the part that they included over the artwork is ugly. But if they didn't include that, the lands wouldn't feel special enough. There's only so many different things you can do with these lands. And so because Wizards has gone to the well so many times on these lands, they just have to, like, how do we make these unique? So they made them unique in this way, and they also made them very limited. You get one of each land. So you get one mountain, plain, swamp, and so on of this particular styling. And then you have the 5 squirrel lands. And what those are is, in each piece of artwork, there's a squirrel hidden in there somewhere, which is a fun concept for people who like squirrels, and a fun concept just overall as an unconcept. It works. That works conceptually. I like it. It's subtle and fun. You don't notice it at first, but when someone points it out, you're like, oh, look, you can see the squirrel in the clouds here or whatever. And that is fun. I do like that. However, what's happened is the price tag on this. For example, to buy the Unsanctioned set here in Canada, it's $65. The Game Night product, which was 5 pre-constructed decks, the decks all ready to go, that also included like playable new cards that only existed in this box set. I think they made 1 per deck. So there weren't as many new unique cards to the deck. But either way, you got 5 60 card decks instead of 5 30 card decks. And some other little frit-frap that went with it. But it was about $30. This box set is $65 for 5 half-size decks and 10 lands. So the value is really like front-loaded into the lands here. And this is actually, I've gotten reports from people telling me that their game stores are like, you can buy the Unsanctioned box set for a lot less money. We get to keep the lands. So they just sell you the unstuff and keep the lands because the secondary market value, the perceived secondary market value on the lands is so much higher. But there are also people complaining that these lands are set in every box. Unlike booster packs, where it's like you got to get each booster and they each have a randomly assigned land to them. It's just like each box set has this specific amount. So Wizards has essentially artificially increased the price that regular unplayers are going to have to pay to end up getting these lands, where it's like you can't, I mean, aside from a store saying, yes, we will sell it to you just this part and we keep the lands, which is not the norm. I've only heard about that happening in 1 or 2 places. But either way, you're basically, Wizards is saying, like, we put these lands in here to try and get people to buy it, to give it like a secondary market value from that perspective, so people who aren't into unsets will be attracted to it. But this should be a product for people who enjoy unsets to enjoy. But they're essentially being forced to pay more than double on the premise that these lands are special. But in the previous cases, these lands were special because the entire, like, they would build an entire set, and the set would be worthless from a secondary market perspective, and the lands where all the value got stored, essentially, because Magic cards, box openings, EVs, and valuation stores and stuff like that, it's a very weird way this all works. But that was the natural pattern of but that was also built around giving you boosters and an actual experience in that regard, instead of just going, we're making an product with these specifically set decks, and we're throwing in these lands, and now you've got to pay more than double. There's no justification for it. They're just arbitrarily saying that these lands are worth X through the way that this product is priced. Because it's not like these are $65 on the secondary market because Wizards is selling them super cheap and the stores are driving the price up. That's just basically like Wizards has abolished MSRP, but they still decide how much they're going to sell stuff to distributors for, and then distributors add their percentage to it and sell it at whatever. So it's understandable why people are frustrated with this product overall. I like the idea of the little undecks, but the price tag is so high that I'm not getting it. I want the cards for my cube, some of them, but there's no way that I'm buying this product and getting, oh, well, whoop-de-doo, let's get some ugly lands I don't care about and some squirrel lands. It's just, it feels somewhat skeezy. So I get the discontent. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about that. Are you into the unsanctioned? Does the land situation bother you? Or are you one of the people who are hyped about the lands and want all the lands? I mean, if you like them, that's cool. It's all good. Enjoy what you enjoy. But for me, overall, the product is a fair disappointment. So, thanks for coming by, my friends. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I will see you all here tomorrow. Big shout out to my patrons and channel members. I'm going to get on up out of here. And that means I'm history, baby.